All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast. Week 2 of the college football season is here, and we are talking about it here on the Press Pass today. It is Wednesday, September 3rd. My name is Rick Butler. As always, I have my co-hosts here with me, Ryan Shumpert and Ryan Sylvia. Ryan Shumpert, how was the Week 1 slate for you? Did it live up to everything you kind of wanted it to be, or everything you were waiting for it to be throughout the offseason?
Yeah, I guess generally speaking so. There's obviously some more boring or bad games mixed in there, but I think there were a handful of good games as well. Certainly, we were watching Clemson LSU driving back, and then that Notre Dame Miami game on Sunday night was great, and both those games Friday night were pretty competitive too. So, I know people probably say Texas Ohio State a bit of a dud. Alabama Florida State probably more entertaining than people expected. But yeah, no, it was a good Week 1 slate, and glad we got some football back.
Sylvia, how are you doing after all the festivities over the weekend? Obviously, like Shumpert mentioned a second ago, the three of us got to go to Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That was only my own personal second time there. First time was way up in the nosebleeds, so this was quite the different experience. But how was your Week 1 slate for what the college football season has brought us?
It was fun. I've never been to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We got to look at the outside of it when we went down for media day together a couple months ago, but
Yeah, we did.
never actually been in it. The media meal was 10 out of 10, so that's really all my bar is as far as ranking a stadium. So I thought it was fun. Alabama lost, and I got to brag about saying they were going to suck all off season. And I got to go talk a bunch of crap to Chase Thomas later today about his Alabama preseason national championship pick. So it was a successful Week 1 slate, I would say. And then obviously getting first game with RTI under the belt was fun. Got to make an appearance with the team over at WATE with Rick. So it was a successful Week 1 for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It certainly was successful. That pregame meal was fantastic. Sylvia and I were two of the last to eat it because, as he just mentioned, we had to go do we had the opportunity to go do the WATE television stuff. So we were the two last to eat. I think both of us went up for seconds. I think we would have gone for thirds if there was a chance to, if time wasn't winding down before opening kickoff. Just a great breakfast buffet. There's nothing like a breakfast buffet in this whole world. If you can get a good one, you have hit the jackpot on that. But I'm sure that'll be fun. And
one
yeah,
funny story from the buffet.
okay.
They had waffles were part of the buffet, high level waffles.
Yeah, and they were good.
And they had like these tiny spoons to get syrup on it, like tiny spoons. And they had two bowls of syrup. So there was one guy standing on one bowl getting syrup and me on the other. And I hit him with I thought it was like some random Syracuse writer, some guy I didn't notice, guy in a golf shirt was like, couldn't have gotten some bigger spoons here to speed along this process. And he turns to me, he's got Aflac kickoff. Aflac kickoff game shirt on.
Oh no.
Yeah, so
that's great.
Yeah, but he had the same take as me, but that was funny. A little instant regret. I was like, didn't think I was talking to someone with the Aflac kickoff game.
Yeah, sometimes you're right. They look too much just like, anybody else who's there to cover the game, and you just don't know. That's a tricky situation to be in. Again, we watched it live and in person. Many of you watched it on your television set. Some of you were there in Atlanta as well. But number 24, Tennessee picks up the season opening win over Syracuse, 45-26. Joey Aguilar in his Tennessee debut throws for 247 yards and 3 touchdown passes. One to Braylon Staley, the other to Star Thomas, and the final one to Miles Kitselman. Tennessee goes for 246, I believe it was, yards on the ground as a team. 248. About as balanced of an offense as you could be. 248 yards rushing, 247 yards passing, almost 50-50 exactly. Just a really balanced showing for Tennessee's offense. And they blitzed the Orange right off the bat in the first half, 17 in the first quarter, 14 in the second quarter for 31 in the first half. And we saw a little bit of that Tennessee offensive tempo come back into play. But then on the defensive side of the ball, a lot of injuries. You might have heard us talk about it on the post-game press pass. You might have heard it on the instant reaction that Shumpert and I did on the field afterwards. Maybe even if you were listening to the WATE post-game show as well. But certainly Tennessee dealing with some injuries coming out of that game on the defensive line and the secondary, which we will talk about for a main portion of the show today. But I kind of just want to start it up and open it up to you guys before we get into the meat of things today. Any other kind of final takeaways now, a couple days after this Syracuse game settles in? Any other kind of final takeaways on what Tennessee was able to do in that season opener, whether it be Joey Aguilar, whether it be the defensive line, something along those lines? Shump, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think two things, and one, just kind of from the rewatch first, and I hit on this after the game some, but just the different looks of the offense, I think, was, to me, the most notable thing from the game. If you're going to talk about, not just what happened, but what that means for Tennessee, both this season and long term. Just formations we never seen before. Still a lot of 12 personnel, but I feel like they were a lot more creative with how they used mostly Miles Kitselman and Ethan Davis in that sets, kind of some H-backs, them in different spots. We saw trips formation, something we've never seen under Josh Heupel. We saw 12 personnel, 2 receivers on one side. So it was just a unique look from what we've seen from Tennessee under Josh Heupel, and I think it's, it adds some intrigue to what will that look like going forward. I'm sure we won't see. I imagine it'll be pretty vanilla this week with stuff, just with it being ETSU, but it'll be interesting to see what a lot of that looks like the rest of the season. It felt like they ran a lot of RPOs. It was another thought I had watching the game, but was further, backed up by watching the tape. I imagine that's just something they have seen Joey Aguilar be comfortable in right now. Some of those quick reads. And then, Sylvia wrote about this, so this is a small thing, but Ethan Davis, just watching the game back, how well he was in run blocking. That's obviously been the big question mark for him. It's a guy that kind of came in as a tight end with more of a receiver experience and skill set. I think he's grabbed that second tight end job, not by what he's been able to do as a pass catcher, but by improving as a blocker. So I thought that was at least noteworthy, something we haven't really seen from Ethan Davis, at least to the extent that we saw it on Saturday.
Yeah, that was something that Cole Kublik talked about in his SEC film study, which is a really good piece of work. In case you haven't seen it, head over to YouTube, and I believe it's the Cube Show on YouTube. It's about a 13 or 14-minute breakdown of what Tennessee was able to do, and he was highly complimentary of Tennessee's tight ends and being able to move guys in that running game, whether it be 15 yards, 20 yards down the field. I think I've seen some people praising Tennessee's wide receivers for their run blocking efforts as well. And that kind of leads me into my takeaway from the game is just that, hey, Tennessee's running game is legit, with the guys that they have in the backfield. And again, I think we could talk all season long about, who might have the advantage in terms of snaps or starts or whatever it might be. But I kind of do, start to believe Darrell Sims and what he was saying during the fall camp. And it's just, hey, whoever's got the majority or whoever has the best kind of week of preparation heading into the week might get the most snaps, but it's also going to be a feel thing throughout the game. But Star Thomas was impressive in his Tennessee debut, 92 yards in that, again, receiving touchdown on the broken play with Joey Aguilar. I thought that was really heads up, high IQ play. Deshaun Bishop broke off that 47-yard run where he just looked like a monster. I mean, he broke 2 tackles maybe in the backfield around the line of scrimmage and was able to use his speed to scamper down the field. An old school guy with the no gloves. I know Sylvia wrote about that yesterday again, and that was something that he kind of joked about with the media, just saying that, I practiced a lot without gloves and wanted to get a good feel for the football and wanted to kind of rely on my own self, my own instincts. And then he got to the game and was just, hey, this is the way I've been practicing and this is the way I'm going to do so. And then Peyton Lewis, obviously kind of the low man on the totem pole in terms of yards. He only had 38 compared to the other 82 and 92. But he was really impressive, and I thought the 8 runs that he did get, including that touchdown, where he just barreled somebody over into the end zone. I mean, that could have been a play where the linebacker stood him up where he was and flipped him, right around on his back. Peyton Lewis pushed him right into the end zone. I think if there wasn't an end zone right there, he could have kept running right through that guy. So we felt like that was going to be a strength of Tennessee's offense coming into this thing. But then again, you give credit to the offensive line, to the tight ends, and to the wide receivers as well for the way that they were able to block. Braylon Staley coming in with a massive block on Deshaun Bishop's run as well. So that was a high point from the game for me. Again, not necessarily something that was unexpected or a surprise, but I think in game one, if you can kind of reassure yourself on some of the positives that you felt like were coming out of fall camp and going into the season, that's a huge benefit as well. So run game, couple of good stars in my book. Sylvia, what about you?
Yeah, Shumpert hit on a lot of the same thoughts that I had when I rewatched the game. I'll expand quickly on two of them. The one, the RPO, which I thought really it was Joey Halsley's comments about kind of what the next step is, like where he wants to see the biggest improvement for Joey Aguilar is against ETSU, and it was in the quote run pass stuff, just in terms of making the right read. Not that it was even he was making the wrong reads, but maybe doing it a little quicker. Accelerated was once again the word he used. So I think that's something to look at in the ETSU game. I'm sure they'll go to a good amount of it again. Maybe not anything that's necessarily a new look, like Shumpert said, but just something that they'll go to that concept a lot just to try to get him more comfortable, because it does seem like something that they really do want to do with him. And that too is something that Halsey said, like, I guess if you had one knock on Joey Aguilar, it's the completion percentage. If you're just looking at the stat line, some of them maybe catchable balls that the receivers could help him out, but he was sailing a couple, and he wasn't throwing, right to the numbers or to the face mask on a few of them. So he could be a little more accurate on a couple. And that was something that Joey Halsey talked about as well, would get improved from the RPO stuff. And then Ethan Davis. Yeah, I thought, you get caught up in looking at the stat sheet and looking at what tight ends do as a receiver, especially a guy like Ethan Davis, who has all the skill set you would want in the world to be a really good receiving tight end. It hasn't clicked for him yet. He hasn't been able to produce as a receiving tight end yet. But the fact that he was able to go in and block as well as he did, I thought was really encouraging, and makes you maybe a little more confident that he can go out throughout the season. And even if he's not making a huge impact through the air, that you can still rely on him in some of those 12 personnel sets. And then kind of building off that real quick, the receivers blocked really well, which I was curious to see. And even you said Braylon Staley. Yeah, I mean, Braylon Staley's out there throwing blocks. Chris Brazel was throwing blocks. Like, that was also something that stood out to me, is it wasn't just the offensive line and the tight ends block. Like, the receivers were opening things up down the field as well. So overall, I think you have to be pretty happy with what Tennessee did on Saturday. Should be a complete blowout this weekend. I think we'd all be surprised if it wasn't. And then all of a sudden you got a massive test coming up in the first SEC opener against Georgia.
Yeah, for sure. It's Staley is one that I think stock up, probably just from the game as a whole, but watching some things back and just kind of taking in his performance, it felt like a very complete performance, I guess. With obviously the deep ball, caught a couple balls in the intermediate. They used him in a screen game, and then he had a couple really, really nice blocks. So big time performance from Staley, and I think I'll be curious to see what some of that receiver rotation looks like this weekend, with a chance to open things up maybe a little bit more.
Let me pose a quick question that I got asked by Bob Baskerville on his show over on Fan Run yesterday when I did theirs. It was, blank was the biggest kind of positive surprise on the offensive end from Tennessee in that Syracuse game. Like, one guy you weren't necessarily sure what you're going to get, and you're like, okay, he looked good.
I mean, I think it's Joey Aguilar, to be honest.
Okay.
If not, probably Staley.
Staley and Jesse Perry were the two that I kind of touched on.
Perry was the first guy that came to my mind, just because he shows you that with that ability to slide over to right tackle, which, by the way, in case you didn't see about it or see it or hear about it earlier this week, it looked like that was a late timetable thing for him. Only was told on Saturday morning, just a couple hours before kickoff, that he was going to be starting at that right tackle position. Told us during fall camp that he'd been primarily working at guard. He strikes me as a very versatile piece for this Tennessee offensive line, and so I think that was a huge benefit. Maybe not the biggest surprise necessarily, or maybe not the biggest takeaway, but a really welcome surprise, I think, if you're Tennessee's offense and the versatility that he can bring you down the road.
Yeah, I think that's something you just look at from a long-term standpoint. I mean, building depth is so hard, especially on the offensive line. Like, having backup tackles that are competent, I think, is very difficult to have these days. So you're talking about a guy that's just a second-year player, redshirt freshman. I imagine he'll probably, ideally, down the road for Tennessee, continue to be starting at guard. But having somebody like that can slide outside and play tackle and be solid at that spot too, I think is just super, super valuable. And you saw that on Saturday.
And then to your point, obviously Joey Aguilar is a very valid answer to that question, because who knew what he could have been? Horrible. He could have been terrific. It could have been down the middle, lean towards a very strong performance, but he was absolutely a valid answer for that as well.
Yeah, I just feel like he didn't put the ball. I mean, he obviously fumbled the one on the mesh point with Star Thomas, but I just didn't feel like he put the ball in harm's way a ton either.
No.
And he just looked he just looked very comfortable running Tennessee's offense, which I think is, that's something we talked about a lot in fall camp. But the coaches are saying that, but we don't have any idea. We're not watching it, so you don't know what's just coach speak, and obviously they're not going to rip the guy a ton. Actually, speaking of that, completely off topic. Did y'all see Dabo ripping Cade Klubnik?
I saw him grade out LSU and Clemson, and then Brian back, but I didn't see the Cade Klubnik grade.
Maybe I got on. I don't think I got, but maybe I got on Rick's favorite tool AI. But he was basically like, we got it.
No, you're right.
Better.
I'll get
He's got a. He had on one third down play. He had a wide open touchdown. He had another play, a slant that he throws it to Wesco, should be to Reed. It's a big play. Instead, he throws it into double coverage. Does something like we're not going to go very far if two doesn't play a lot better. So, something to that extent.
The quote I just read on CBS is, our biggest issue against LSU was that our best player didn't play well, which is it is a tough look. I don't know. That's Dabo Swinney.
Yeah, I see. I feel like, and look, I can't take the victory lap like you can, Sylvia, because you were all over the anti-Bama stuff. I also was just so skeptical of Clemson. Like their offense was getting so much love because they played well in garbage time against Texas. Cade Klubnik had been mediocre to bad for 3 years, and he had one good half while down multiple scores against Texas, and he got crowned a Heisman Trophy candidate going into this year. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, I mean they just have a few NFL talent guys up front, things like that. But I would tend to agree. Yeah. That's all besides the point.
Yes.
At one point, Dabo was asked what flustered Cade so much. He said, "I don't know. He just didn't play well. He didn't do the routine things well. Had I known, it wouldn't have happened. He just got flustered," which is great because you have the quote that says, "Had I known, it wouldn't have happened," which is great that Dabo, can take responsibility for something like that. But then he starts the question with, "I don't know if he got flustered," and then he ends his three sentence quote with, "He just got flustered." So obviously, within those 20 words, he had decided in his head that yes, Cade Klubnik got flustered in that game. So that's a good one there. All right, so here's kind of the plan for the show today, even though we're almost 20 minutes into the program already. Going to talk about the big news of the week here that Josh Heupel broke during his press conference on Monday, and then sort of in the show today with a couple of our thoughts on the ETSU game coming up this week, and obviously next week's podcast going to be a huge one before the Georgia game, but today we're just talking a lot of personnel. As always, you can go and find all of our coverage over at RockyTopInsider.com. Make sure you're following Rocky Top Insider on all different social media channels to get the best throughout the week. And, of course, be up to date with our friends over at WATE Channel 6. You can go and check out this podcast right here. If you're not watching it online or listening to the podcast, you can go and check it out on the WATE 6 Plus Smart TV app. They are always there right during the day of the show, right when we upload. It's also going there. And then also be sure to check out their pregame and postgame shows as one of us or two of us in some sort of rotation or some sort of capacity are joining along with Sam Rothman and or Casey K over there to get the best Tennessee news, notes, and coverage over from Neyland Stadium. So that is just a quick housekeeping. Otherwise, Sylvia, I'll actually turn this one over to you because you wrote the article about it on Monday. Josh Heupel broke some very big injury news for Tennessee heading into the ETSU game. Now, we knew going into the season that David Hobbs on the defensive line, he was banged up to start the year. Jackson Moy, I believe it was on the first drive of the game. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong there. He gets injured at some point. Josh Heupel did reveal that he will be missing the ETSU game, which, by the way, I thought was a bit of the change in norm that he did just kind of come out, that Josh Heupel did just kind of come out and say, hey, yes, he's going to miss this game, and then we'll see about after that. But none of those were the big one as Tennessee loses one of their top cornerbacks, especially as they continue to wait for Jamad McCoy to return to the field. Sylvia, talk to me about what Josh Heupel broke to the media on Monday during his press conference.
Well, also very un-Josh Heupel-like is he just offered not just that this guy was going to miss this upcoming game against ETSU, but a, quote, extended period. And it's Ricky Gibson at cornerback. He also went down early in that Syracuse game. An extended period obviously makes you think it's at least going to be 2 games, which makes you think he's not going to be there for the Georgia game. And where things stand right now, we'll see what the developments look like. But it would be a little bit surprising if Jamad McCoy was ready for that Georgia game too. So all of a sudden you're looking at a Tennessee team that obviously against ETSU, it's not going to matter, but in a week after that, if they are down their 2 starting cornerbacks, things get a little hairy. Where exactly do you go? Colton Hood looked fantastic against Syracuse. So that's all of a sudden an even bigger spring transfer addition than it already was made up to be, which was a big deal in the first place. And then Ty Redmond, a true freshman, looked really good as well in his debut against Syracuse. So I think that'll probably be where they go, at least against ETSU, to start things off. But you're going to have to get at least a third guy in the mix. And that's where it's very interesting to me. Do you go William Wright? He's been around forever, but hasn't played a lot of high leverage football for Tennessee. Or do you try to slide back out Jalen McMurray, who started at star against Syracuse, looked really good, and played cornerback off the bench all last season, which that would in turn mean Boo Carter gets a bunch more snaps at star. So I think that's probably your highest ceiling if you're trying to figure out like what's the best chance to give your defense against Georgia. It would be probably splitting some snaps between star and corner for Jalen McMurray and seeing if he can do both of those in one game, or even just completely slide him out to corner, maybe even, and trusting Boo Carter at star. But I am very curious to see what they do, not just this weekend against ETSU, but going forward until those 2 guys are back. Because extended period, I mean, that could be a numerous week thing. And then also Jamal McCoy, like God knows when he's able to actually get back too.
Yeah, I mean, you said at least 2 weeks. Like I'm saying at least a month on Ricky Gibson.
Could be
extended period for Josh
November.
Heupel to say that. For Josh Heupel to say that, it's like I'd set the over under at the end of October, him being back.
It doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't. And I don't know. Maybe Josh Heupel is just all of a sudden going to be more forthcoming with the media about injuries, and maybe extended period will just be a month, and Jackson Moy will just miss a game. Like he just said he won't play against ETSU. He didn't say that he'll be back for Georgia, but he didn't say that he'll miss Georgia. My take again with Josh Heupel is that Jackson Moy is not going to play against Georgia. Maybe he's more forthcoming now, and he'll be able to go. But no, I mean it's big losses. Like, I guess to start with corner, let me pose this question. Rick, I'll pose it to you first, and Sylvia, I'll get your answer. What's more concerned about the situation at corner right now or at defensive tackle?
I think defensive tackle is going to be a concern against Georgia because of their run game. And if you're not able to stop that run game, I think that is, that's a recipe for disaster. Even though it's in your own building, even though you're going to have a lot of momentum on your side, I think that's a recipe for disaster. But I do think the concerning thing about the secondary, because if you look at it just from face value, Colton Hood, I think outperformed our expectations. He's solid there. Jalen Murray, I think, has been one of the bright spots, maybe of fall camp and this first week of camp combined. We heard during the fall camp that he might be one of those players who's taking that next step. He looked like it with his ability against Syracuse. And then Ty Redmond, I don't think any of us expect Ty. I don't think Ty Redmond expected him, to have this sort of impact role, with a ton of snaps there against the Orange last week. But behind that, the depth is really concerning, right? Somebody goes out there, somebody bums a shoulder, somebody twists an ankle, something along those lines. That's where I think you're really getting tricky. So I still have a good bit of faith that Tennessee's starting secondary is all right. Obviously, it's nowhere near the ceiling that it had with Ricky Gibson and Jermon McCoy, in my opinion, 2 future NFL guys leading the cornerback charge right there. But I still think it's all right and it's manageable. But you got a lot of depth concerns as well. Again, what does the 2 deep look like? Are you looking at other freshmen to potentially play a role? Are you looking at William Wright, as Sylvia said a second ago, to play a role? But in the immediate, I still look at this defensive line without David Hobbs, without Jackson Moy, having to kind of get some guys along like a Jamal Wallace or whoever it is. Nathan Robinson was a bright spot of that Syracuse game, but the knock on him is that he's battled a lot of injuries throughout his Tennessee career so far. So if he's healthy and playing, that's a huge bonus for Tennessee. But if he's not, it's, again, a tough thing to deal with right there. So I think you can look at it either way, but in the immediate, I'm going to go with the defensive line.
I would also say it's at defensive tackle because of how multiple they are in the secondary. Like, I think you can shuffle some things around in the secondary and figure out a combination that works. And that was something that secondary coach Willie Martinez said yesterday too, is like they recruit guys that they know can play a bunch of different positions. Like Caleb Beasley, for example, you could theoretically slide him out to corner. Like I think he would be relatively comfortable there if that's the route they wanted to go. So I think you can mix things up, especially if they have like, okay, Ricky Gibson's going to be out for this long, Jermod McCoy's going to be out for this long. That kind of puts you in a mode at practice. And during this ETSU game, we're like, okay, well, you got to figure something out at cornerback, and you can really start to make more, I don't want to say permanent decisions, but long-term decisions about where guys are going to play for the immediate future. So I'm not as concerned there compared to defensive tackle, because it's just so unbelievably thin. And it was thin before David Hobbs got injured. It was thin before Jackson Moy got injured. And now you're looking at that group, and it's just so different than it was a year ago, where you were able to rotate in like six plus guys. I mean, you look at the snap counts from the game. Bryson Eason played 61 of 90 snaps. That's like Matthew Butler numbers from 2021. Like, that is not something we've seen on the interior of the defensive line for Tennessee in a while. You go down the list. I mean, you have Dominic Bailey played 66 snaps, and now some of those are defensive end, but he was slid in kind of a defensive tackle type of role for a lot of that game as well. So there's a good bit where it's just those two guys. Quick scroll down, you get Jamal Wallace played 22 snaps, and he wasn't horrible, but I wouldn't say he was great. He was kind of just okay in my eyes. And PFF kind of, I mean, they gave him a pretty solid 67.4 grade if you want to look into that. But 22 snaps for Jamal Wallace. I mean, you have to go down. Jackson Moylan played 3 snaps till he went out. So it's not, they didn't go deep either. Nathan Robinson was the name I was forgetting as well, who played fantastic. So, I mean, you're probably looking at 3 or 4 guys, and one of them's a defensive end. That's a lot more shaky to me than the secondary, where I feel like you can just kind of shuffle the deck a little bit and figure out a good combination.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's where I'd be at. And look, I mean, it goes back to something I said in fall camp where, I like Bryson Eason and Jackson Moy a lot more when they're playing 30 snaps a game, when they can be fresh throughout the game. They're good players. They're not all SEC guys. They're not massive difference makers. And all of a sudden, if you're playing, obviously Moy got hurt, but in Eason's case, you're playing 60 snaps. Like, it's just harder to be super productive. That he played and Dominic Bailey played, I don't know the exact number, approximately 15 more snaps than they played in any game last season in Tennessee's first game of the year. So, yeah, I think that's a concern. I think the positive there would be, I'm more confident about them getting Jackson Moy and David Hobbs back before I am about them getting Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson back. Like, corner feels like something they're going to have to battle all year. To me, defense tackle feels like more of an issue this first month of the season. It's certainly, Ricky, you were hit the nail on the head there, having to play Georgia this first month, and their running game, it seems like a not ideal time to have those sort of issues. But at the same time, you have ETSU and UAB too, so you can work around those things without as big of a deal. At corner, I mean, I would just say one. Like, you would have told, 2 days after the season ended or whatever, you said Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson are out indefinitely after the first game of the season. You're like, me, oh my, are they in trouble at corner? Colton Hood, I think we talked about it at the time, was a really big pickup for them. And that's right, the Hood was a really big pickup for them.
Great celebration.
In the spring portal. You see that all the more. Tyler Edmond kind of proven to be a revelation. We'll see how much he can stack things together as a true freshman. But yeah, I think McMurray is the big one. Like, do they feel comfortable enough with Jalen McMurray that they can play him 20 snaps at star and 25 snaps at corner in a game, where he's playing 45 snaps or maybe more than that, but 25, but he can move back and forth during a game, because I think that's really valuable. If not, maybe Caleb Beasley, like you said, Sylvia slides and plays some corner, maybe he slides and plays some star. I mean, that would be a little bit more of an in-between of, he was corner last year, safety this year. I think he's going to continue to play at safety if everybody was healthy, but it does feel like Idris Farouk is locked down being that number one guy at that spot opposite of Andre Turrentine. So the position versatility is very important for him now. And, I'll give him more of a pass to on the stuff at cornerback. Like, I just don't think I doubt there's many teams in the country that could have lost their top 2 corners and been in as good as a spot as Tennessee still is there. So it's not the end of the world, but it's just those injuries seem long-term, and there isn't a whole lot of room for error now moving forward.
Can we let's take a quick look at what I would think would be Tennessee's best secondary. Like, if final drive of the Georgia game, you have a 3-point lead, you need to protect it. I think it's Colton Hood at one of the corner spots. I think it's obviously Idris Farouk and Andre Turrentine at safety. I think it's Boo Carter at star, and I think it's Jalen McMurray at the other cornerback spot. So I'm curious to see if they just pull the trigger on that, and then you try to I think it's a lot easier maybe for someone like a Caleb Beasley to slide into star. Maybe William Wright gets a little bit more action at star. I believe he's played there before. Maybe you feel like Marcus Gorey Jr. could step up one spot in the depth chart. I just feel like your best combination in the secondary while those two guys are out would be to just turn Jalen McMurray back into a cornerback for the time being. Maybe he can get in at star a little bit when you need him to, but I feel like that's just your best combination in the secondary right now. Am I wrong?
I think it's definitely the safest, in the scenario you lined out, or
Yeah.
big win on the line, you're going to trust the more veteran guys over trusting freshman and Ty Redmond. But I think I would still be playing to try to develop him and get him a ton of snaps and hope that if Ricky Gibson and Jermon McCoy are out, whatever, for let's say they just theoretically don't play this season, like Redmond is one of your best corners by the end of the year. So, yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that, especially at this point in the season. But I would also be very proactive trying to get Ty Redmond opportunities and snaps and develop him to where by the end of the year he is in your best five.
I think that's fair because this could be very different 2 weeks from now compared to by the time they're playing Florida on the road. Like Ty Redmond might have been able to cement himself. I think part of that for me is like, oh, you had the good Syracuse game. Let's see it stack up.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure.
And he's going to fail at some point. That's the nature of the position. And he's true freshman, so you want to see how he handles that stuff. And there's still a lot of boxes to check if you're Ty Redmond. To your point.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation for Tennessee going forward, and obviously what they're having internally with those conversations and just trying to figure out who is going to be doing what, how the rotations are going to work. But I think that's going to be something that we're also going to be talking about leading into the Georgia game. Now, obviously, I don't think it's as prevalent for the Buccaneers game this weekend, but it's also an opportunity for I think you want to keep guys healthy in that game. I don't think you can risk too much with that Georgia game right on the other side as the SEC opener. But also, I think it's an opportunity to get some of those new cornerbacks in, try to, maybe see what other those defensive tackles have, just in case you have to, again, if you get to in case of emergency break glass type of situation, I think that you want to be able to kind of know what some of those guys look like. So not that was already going to be the case in a game like this, although you did see some teams across the college football landscape struggle with teams of this caliber or teams of this nature. But I don't foresee Tennessee being that. And so once you can get into a good position with the Bucks on Saturday, I would, again, try to see what that rotation can bring you. I would try to hold guys back so that they don't get any kind of banged up or hurt anything more than it already is or whatever it is. Because, again, you got that Georgia game just so early in the year. Typically it's not, but with it being at home, again, we can talk about Tennessee's chances. I think all three of us picked Georgia, but you still want to put yourself in as best position as you can heading into that game. So I think that's a big kind of talking point going into the ETSU game. It's just sort of what do these rotations look like? How many guys can they get in? And just how many guys can they get a little bit of on-field experience in case, again, they got to break that glass in case of emergency in the near future.
For sure. I'd say, to me, guys that I'll be watching against ETSU, I think it's that defensive back rotation just to see how they handle that moving forward. I think it's Travis Smith and Rodarius Jackson at receiver. Smith got a couple snaps, not a ton. Jackson, I don't think, played any against Syracuse. I'll be curious to see what those guys look like. David Sanders, the expectation is for him to play. I'll be watching him and seeing how he performs, and then I just think it'll be curious to see with the quarterbacks, how they handle that when and what they do when Joey Aguilar, is pulled from the game.
Yeah, I think all those are, ones that I'll certainly be looking at as well. I think on the interior of the defensive line to, kind of touch back on that. I'm curious to see what Ethan Utley and Isaiah Campbell do. We didn't see Isaiah Campbell play in that first game. I don't think. I'll check the snap counts really fast, but I don't think he didn't get on the field. So I'm curious to see if he, I would assume he gets in the mix in this ETSU game. So you can't really, I don't think you can rely on a Matthew Butler type of guy. I pulled up his snap counts too because I was curious how it compared to Bryson Easton's. He played 83 snaps at Kentucky that game, which is
those are wild.
But most of them are 78 against Ole Miss as well. But there was 3 of them within the 60s and a handful within the 50s. And then, kind of in the blowout games, it was between 25 and 49. So still,
Yeah, those
That's
were insane.
that's still the same range that Bryson Easton played in terms of like the medium Matthew Butler Iron Man type of season he had in 2021. I don't think that's sustainable, particularly when you're thin on the defensive or on the interior of the defensive line, because something happens to him. Oh my God. Like all of a sudden you are not just extremely thin, you're extraordinarily thin, or whatever you want to call it. So can one of those two freshmen particularly step up and try to be an impact this season? Ethan Utley got a little bit of run against Syracuse. He looked good. Can Isaiah Campbell get in the mix there as well? Can both of them get in the mix? That could go a long way later in this season if you're able to start to build some depth up there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Shump, you mentioned a second ago, aside from the, injury positions of need and the ones that you're looking for just to kind of get a sense of things in the future, you hit it on a second ago. The wide receivers are a place that I really want to, kind of keep an eye on against the Bucks here on Saturday. Not only can you get those three starters, just a little bit more kind of continued experience along with Joey Aguilar. Maybe you want to see a couple of those drops cut down, although I don't think they'll have a full game of work to work with. I think I said that right. Who cares? But then also those guys behind him, Trav Smith got in a couple of plays against Syracuse. I don't think we saw Rodarius Jackson. What can those guys bring to the table and what can they do and kind of show out? That's certainly something I'm interested in looking forward to. So, again, I think as we talked about, it's probably going to be a pretty favorable sized win for Tennessee. I don't believe that the betting markets are touching this game, or at least I have not seen them do so to this point in the week, Wednesday morning. So it's a game where I think if you're Tennessee, just try to go out there, get this thing as lopsided as possible as quickly as you can so that you can start working in some of those next guys on the depth chart. Some, whether it's for, again, just getting them early game experience in their careers, or whether you're kind of getting them prepared for maybe something to come at some point in the future if you are in one of those, reserved positions who have been dealing with injury a little bit. I think if you're a Tennessee fan watching the game, those are kind of the things that helps carry you through the fourth quarter, because I don't think the scoreboard certainly will. So a couple of interesting things to look at for this game against the Bucks.
Yeah, I touched on it a minute ago. I think quarterback, just like how they handle that, it's still at the point where I think you want to get Joey Aguilar a lot of reps. So when do you pull him from the game, and then how many drives are you ideally looking to get Jake Merklinger and George McIntyre? I mean, I imagine both will play in this game. Do you try to get both a drive each, 2 drives each, or are you fine to get Merklinger 2 drives and McIntyre 1? Like that. That's all just very curious to me. Because some of these games, not all of them, I mean, Kent State sticks to mind from last year, have moved pretty quick when they've gotten to the second half, or they've really just tried to run a lot of clock and get out of there healthy. So I'm curious to see what that could look like in this one.
It does bring up the question. Another thing I was asked when I did Bob's radio show yesterday is like, how much are you going to see of the starters in this game? And I think obviously it's part of the nature of both sides of the ball. But defensively, I think you build up a lead and you get those guys out, and they'll do it pretty like before even halftime. It's like, all right, the last thing you need right now is Arian Carter to get injured. Like, get those guys that are your star defensive guys out of the game when it's a comfortable lead. Offensively, I think you could use really all the first half and leak into the second half of let's get Joey Aguilar and these guys on the same page. Let's, you saw the fumble on the mesh. Let's try to straighten some things out in that department. Let's try to get on the same page a little bit more with the route running and the ball placement and things like that. I think offensively, maybe the offensive line changes a little bit. Like you'd even want Sam Pendleton to maybe get some more in-game snaps under his belt before you face a Georgia defensive line. So I think defensively, get in, get out. Offensively, there's a going too far limit to it. But for the most part, I think offensively it would stand or would help Tennessee a lot more to leave the starters in a little bit longer than maybe you typically would in a presumed blowout game, just because it's all so many new faces on that side of the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I mean, look, you just have more injuries on defense too, so you're more willing to, I don't know if risk is the right word, but leave your main guys on offense out there a little bit longer.
Yeah, and it's also just part of it. So it's like the nature of defense, where it's like it's a lot easier to rotate in on the defensive side and the offensive side too. So it's just also kind of easier, like, all right, let's do the platoon sub on the defensive line and get those guys in rather than on offense, where it's really almost drive by drive basis with Tennessee.
I can't remember what Josh Heupel said about it on Monday. Is Davis Sanders Jr. projected to return to the, I guess maybe not return, but make his debut with the starting line coming up this weekend? Is that, did I miss anything on Monday about that?
He didn't say anything about on Monday, but
Okay.
his comments on Saturday after the game indicated that he would play.
There you go. And again, if you're working David Sanders Jr. in, obviously get him some good reps with the first team, get him comfortable if he is going to be that starting right tackle against Georgia, but we will see. Again, that Georgia game being the third week of the season, man, it makes a lot of things here early in the season interesting that might not have carried the same weight as it did without that. So that is something that I think everybody is building to and looking forward to. I know Josh Heupel doesn't like to look ahead, but we do have that luxury. Of looking ahead to Georgia. And we will get to all that plenty next week. Again, this game on Saturday, number 22 Tennessee against ETSU, the home opener from Neyland Stadium, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN Plus and the SEC Network Plus. So this will be everyone's favorite streaming game. Make sure to look out for the streaming wherever you find that, ESPN Plus, whether it's the app or however you get there. We will have a link over on RockyTopInsider.com. starting on Friday afternoon, Friday morning, somewhere around then. But we will have a link to get you straight to the streaming source if you have if you have trouble finding it, or at least direction. So be on the lookout for that. And then, of course, the three of us will be in Neyland Stadium for that game coming up on Saturday. We will bring you all of the live on-site coverage for that game from Neyland Stadium. Other week 2 matchups. Is there anything else that interests you guys on the week 2 slate, and why? Is it Alex Golesh's South Florida Bulls against the Florida Gators in Gainesville?
For me, it's Oklahoma versus Michigan. John Mateer, it's obviously opponent on Tennessee's schedule. Oklahoma's offense didn't really look great last week, though Mateer put up some good numbers. So I'm curious to see what that'll look like. And yeah, Butch Jones against Arkansas, another Tennessee opponent.
There you go.
It's not a great slate of games, but there are still some intriguing ones. Virginia Tech versus Vanderbilt. I'll be really curious to see how that game goes. Kind of the first real test for Vanderbilt. And Virginia Tech, I know Sylvia doesn't like to hear it, but they at least looked a little bit improved to me against South Carolina.
I'll say my quick Virginia Tech thoughts. I have a very good friend from high school that went to Virginia Tech. So I talked some Hokies with him yesterday. This team's the poster child of a 6-6 football team, and it will be enough to keep Brent Pry his job, which kind of sucks for Virginia Tech. I don't think he's the guy. However, unreal scheduling. I know it's Vanderbilt, but you're starting the season with 2 SEC teams. That is unreal scheduling from Virginia Tech.
That is tough.
Yeah. When I look on the slate, though, we do get the first SEC matchup, Ole Miss Kentucky, which I feel like usually is interesting for no reason. That Florida game does stand out because
I don't know if it'll be interesting.
Had his guys look. I mean, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be interesting.
Shouldn't have been last year.
But I mean, yeah,
sure.
It's one of those games that every year it's like, all right, why is this a 7-point game right now? And we'll see how Alabama responds against the UL Monroe squad over there. Obviously, some history in that matchup as well. So I'm curious to see how they do. My final thought as well before we get out of here: Dolphin vindicated. Tennessee beat Syracuse, and the Dolphin at the Atlanta Aquarium was correct.
It was.
Dolphin vindicated.
Dolphin vindicated.
That was a big deal.
Who did the Dolphins pick in South Carolina? You might have just said this. Did they pick South Carolina? Do we know?
I looked, I think, on Saturday because I was truly curious what the Dolphin picked.
Yeah.
And
look up what the
Dolphin
Dolphin
vindicated
picked.
was the Dolphin.
All right. You guys, I'm going to go research this really fast. You guys
might only be partially vindicated.
Yeah, one thing I'll say just to touch on ETSU, some ties here to Tennessee.
Yes, there's some
Charlie Browder,
as well from the quarterback position, right?
Well, you get that too. No ties to Tennessee there, but ties to Tennessee at tight end. Former Tennessee walk-on Charlie Browder. He is at ETSU. He's their starting tight end now. He had a couple catches, I think, in their opener over Murray State. Yeah, 2 catches for 32 yards. So he'll be back at Neyland Stadium, and then you had a quarterback situation. 2 quarterback. Will Healy, ETSU's coach, said they want to be the poster child for a 2 quarterback system. They have Iowa transfer Cade McNamara and North Carolina transfer Jacoby Briswell. They played kind of 2 drives on, 2 drives off in the first game, but even substituted a little bit in drives is what Jeff Birchfield of the Johnson City Press told me earlier this week. So McNamara, a little bit more of a true passer. Griswold, a little bit more Chriswell, I should say, not Christmas Vacation, not Griswold, but Chriswell, a little bit more of a runner.
There you go. And I believe, Sylvia, you've got this one, but I believe ETSU is now ranked, right, in the FCS rankings. Is that correct?
Yeah, we got a ranked matchup in Neyland Stadium coming up this Saturday. Number 24 ETSU, you can lightly say in the FCS coaches poll, but it does show that Tennessee does have one of the better FCS teams, or at least through week one projected better FCS teams on their hand. They look decent against Murray State. The offense was rolling. The rushing game, they ran the ball everywhere. They ran it a lot, and they had a lot of success. The defense did a pretty good job as well. It's an FCS opponent. Tennessee should do whatever they want in this game, but for whatever it means, a top 25 FCS team coming to town. So I guess you live with that.
53 new players on this ETSU team under first-year coach Will Healy.
So in the important news, the Dolphin did not pick the South Carolina-Virginia Tech game. However, Diego the Seal was vindicated, and he picked South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Why is there so much
Seal
SEC bias in
vindicated.
the Georgia Aquarium?
They know ball. They know the SEC runs things. They know the SEC is better than the ACC, and it's not a competition. So they took the safe picks and they came through.
Yeah.
Was there a Seal that picked the Tennessee-Syracuse game? I mean, was he just slacking during that part?
Well, I think they thought the Dolphin is historically one of the smarter mammals on Earth, so they put one of their finest aquarium animals to the test on the Tennessee game, and then let this. Maybe I might have offended some aquarists.
Well, they had both. They had both for the second one.
I should say. I don't know if there's a difference between seal and sea lion, but Diego's a sea lion, and he picked South Carolina. And it says,
Vindicated.
Let's see who he SEA Lex.
The main difference between the seals and the sea lions are that the sea lions, A, have external ear flaps, and B, can rotate their hind flippers to walk, quote unquote, on land. And they can use their long front flippers for swimming power. So I think the sea lion is a little bit more land active, if you will.
Yeah,
a little bit more versatility, cross training.
A little bit more versatility. It's like the Jesse Perry of the sea. It can do two different things. Yeah. Any other good facts that you're finding, Sylvia? You look deep into the research.
This seems to be it on these. I'm rewatching the Dolphin decision. It's a little Mickey Mouse on. He kind of goes up to the Syracuse helmet first and then switches over to Tennessee. I feel like they could have pulled the trigger on the Syracuse pick at one point, but he ended up with it.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Anyways, that is going to wrap it up for us today on this episode of the RTI Press Pass on a Wednesday, September 3rd. Again, make sure you're staying in touch with RockyTopInsiderOnline.com for all of your Tennessee news, notes, and coverage, and then also on all 5 of our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. We're bringing you all sorts of content on each one of those platforms, so make sure you are locked in, you are subscribed, you are following, whatever it might be. And then again, just check out our friends over at WATE Channel 6, whether that is on the normal Channel 6 channel, whether that is on the WATE 6 Plus Smart TV app, or something else in between. Be on the lookout for one of us, or at least 2 of us, or some combination of us on the pregame show, potentially even the postgame show before the game against the Buccaneers this Saturday. And then last but not least, if you want to follow all of us on social media, you can do that. Ryan Shumpert is at rshump00. That's SCHUMP. Ryan Sylvia is at Ryan T. Sylvia. Jack Foster, a good friend, is at Jack Foster Media. And myself, Rick Butler, is at Rick_Butler as well. As always, though, make sure you're just checking out at Rocky Top Insider and RockyTopInsider.com each and every day for the latest Tennessee news, notes, and coverage. Hey, we will see you from what should be a packed Neyland Stadium for the home opener this Saturday in Knoxville. I don't know the weather that it'll be, but hopefully it's nice weather, not a little bit overcast and a little rainy like it is here today on Wednesday morning. We will have to wait and see. That's going to wrap it up for us today. Thanks so much for watching the latest edition of the Press Pass podcast. We will see you after the game on Saturday for another episode of the Press Pass and a stand-up video from the field of Neyland Stadium. Thanks so much for watching today. For Ryan Schumpert, for Ryan Sylvia, I am Rick Butler. It's been the RTI Press Pass podcast.